We rounded the building and found the commander, who was 16 years old, drinking palm wine, lots of drugs around, so he's high as well, and he's slouched on a chair, he's slouched. And we were used to the weapons, lots of rebels, but this chap had a pistol on his lap, and it was very casually placed, and that was alarming, immediately seeing how casual the pistol was, because you got the impression that it would be used very casually as well. And I was off the road, away from the vehicle. Cody's still in the vehicle, not knows what's happening, just saw me leave the road. So I knew that I was out of control, but I also knew that I couldn't give that impression. So I sat down, and immediately, I wasn't mimicking, but I reflected the commander's stance and attitude. So he was slouching, so I immediately sort of like relaxed back into the chair and slouched slightly like him. So I adopted his attitude, if you like, not confrontationally, just to show that I wasn't concerned. And the attitude that I took after a while of, firstly, there were questions about who I was, what I was doing, and my story remained the same throughout. I'm here to build the camps. We've spoken to commanders, and I named the commanders that I'd spoken to in McKinney, explained that I had permission to be here, understood that he was doing his job and that this was a mistake, and once they got clarification, it would all be sorted out, and I wasn't concerned, no problem. And eventually the atmosphere chilled slightly, in that he then started to offer me wine, offered me the palm wine, which I took, and I was drinking the wine. And so I offered cigarettes and lost a packet of cigarettes because everyone took one. But at the same time, whilst this is happening, there's a lot of interest being generated by this stranger in a strange situation talking to the commander. And now I'm surrounded by rebels who are a lot younger than the commander. I mean, some of them are children who have got bayonets on their weapons, and the weapon and the bayonet is taller than them. And now my concern was that someone could accidentally let off a round, and if that happened, then Cody in the vehicle would assume the worst and probably leave. So there was lots of things, and the situation changed. But once it had got to the stage where I felt that we'd come to an agreement, and he believed that I'd spoken to the commanders, and I got to the stage where I thought he wasn't going to actually hurt me, although at the beginning it was very much a possibility. I was left with a situation of face. So I felt that it was safe to leave, but the actual act of standing up would have given the message of I've finished and I'm going, which I couldn't do, because still there was we'd brought ourselves onto equal footing, and I couldn't then just sort of, well, that's it, I'm off then. I had to be given permission to leave, and that wasn't going to be forthcoming, I don't think. And I seized an opportunity where the commander actually stood up and said, right, I'm going to take some photos. So and I was surrounded, as soon as they take photos, I was surrounded by all his men who wanted to be in the photo, and he stood off and was taking photos. And then he came back to sit down, and I jumped up and got hold of the camera and said, no, I'll take some. And that was me. It was just the act of standing up, which is what I needed. So I went off and took some photos, and I noticed that there was not even a film in the camera. So, I mean, I was just playing along anyway. And actually, at this stage, I was starting to relax, so I got them to pose a little. The complete ridiculousness of the situation sort of struck me as reasonably amusing at that stage, that I could take photos without filming. But that was it, I was up. And then I could walk back, I could hand the camera back and say, thank you very much, it's been great. But now I've got to get going, so great. And then I started to walk down the hill. I wasn't looking back, and it was a good 100 meters down the hill. And all I could see was the road, and I was thinking, just get to the road, and you'll be okay. So without looking back, I got to the road. When I get to the road, I turn up to where the vehicle is, and about 10 meters from the vehicle, I just peeped to look over my shoulder to see what was happening. And they'd all followed me. I mean, the commander and about 20 men, or boy soldiers as they were 5 meters behind me, following me. And once I'd seen them, I stopped and went back and said, oh, Colonel, his name was actually Colonel Pagal, I remember it very vividly. I said, oh, you're coming with me, excellent. So I sort of put my arm around him and walked him up to the vehicle then, because I didn't know what he'd do when he got to the vehicle. He could have still stopped us going. So when I got to the vehicle, I introduced him to Cody. I was like, Cody, this is Colonel Pagal, you know, we've had a drink, we've taken some photos, we've come to take some photos with you. So I got Cody out of the vehicle and we took some more photos without a film. And then we carried on talking, and it was a case of talking and walking backwards as we sort of kept talking. We got back into the car, you know, we started it and we're still talking and waving and, you know, promising to come and see them another day, and then sort of slowly pulled off waving as if we just had a little break with them and got away.